place where we collect stories and circulate life-changing wisdom. I'm your host, Asher, and my host today is Lisa. And you're here because we get to speak on first-time experiences. And oftentimes on Monday, that's the theme of the Mondays. And it's good to have you here with us today, Lisa, to talk about first-time experiences. So if you don't mind, off the back, telling us where you're hailing from, what you specialize in, or you add invite to the world and who you being a hero. So,
Hmm. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm really excited. And I hail from England. I live in England. I was born in Cyprus, which my I Ching master assures me I was born in Cyprus because it was sort of halfway between, it sort of sits between Asia and Europe, and that my
mhm.
life purpose requires that. So there we go. I'm a legacy creation coach. I work with change makers who are prepared to have it all. I do not work with change makers who want to like wear a hair shirt, live a hard life, make their life difficult for themselves. I absolutely want to see wealth in the hands of people who have a huge mission, like people who want to change the world, whether that's bringing up children that are absolutely gorgeous and amazing and are going to make a difference in the world, or whether it's some of my clients leading global organizations. So
Mm.
that's what I'm about. Um, did I answer your questions?
Who you being a hero to? Who you being a hero to?
Am I being a hero to? Well, I love being a hero to my granddaughter
Mm.
and my new grandson. They're so much fun. I think really I aim to be a hero, even if those words like difficult to get out, to change makers. I want people to look at my life and say, "Oh my God, change making is so much fun. It's so abundant. I get to be healthy, wealthy, wise, and make a difference." Um, so anyone who wants to change the world, starting with their own world, I want to be their hero.
Mm. It's beautifully put, Lisa. People don't want to change the world. And why should people change the world, by the way? I'm curious. Let me start with that question. Why should people change the world? Does the world need changing?
Hmm. I don't think anyone should change the world or should want to change the world, but many of us have a strong drive to do it.
Mm.
And, us, those of us who have souls who and are in touch with those souls who actually decided that they're experiencing and they're learning in this lifetime is through the process of creating change.
Mm.
So you can have an incredible soul experience without changing the world. Just many of us have that urge.
Mm. You mentioned earlier about changing their world, like our little world that we call ours. Is that the first place to start the change? And I saw that as valuable, something to look at. But one of my principles in life is never change who you are,
Mm,
change and improve what you have.
mm,
And when I look back at the separation between, because I really believe that the soul doesn't change, but what the soul collects change.
mm,
So my body is part of what I have, so I get to change that. My knowledge is part of what I have, I get to change that. Like the intelligence I've gathered over time, that's part of what I have, so I get to change that. My intellect is part of what I've
mm,
gathered, so I get to change that. So then when I focus on changing, what do I think about changing? The things that I've collected since birth. And
mm,
those things we can always change because those things are not unchangeable like the soul, so to speak, to put
mm,
those kind of words simply. So when you
mm,
think about changing the world and changing what you have, how do you help people change those things that they collect over time that might not be working?
mm. So sometimes it's changing things that aren't working. Sometimes it's just evolving things that are working.
Mm.
My mantra for the world is first your world, then the world. I see no no value in trying to change the world if you're doing it from a wobbly foundation and you don't have the health, the vitality, the personal prosperity to do those things, because otherwise we're just sacrificing, and sacrificing serves nobody. So if we I work with people to really understand what's limiting their beliefs from having what they need in their world, from having what they desire in their world, really. Um, it's I see it as a really limiting belief that we should focus on what we need.
Mm.
We should meet our needs,
Mm-hmm.
but then we do that in order to focus on what we want, what we desire, like what is our yearnings. Like I love a yearning because I feel like yearning comes from the soul. It's something
Mm.
you can't get away from it. You can't escape a yearning. You can't take a coffee or eat chocolate or it's like scroll social media and take away a yearning. That's your soul calling out. So I want to help people understand what they really yearn for, not what they think they should have, not what they think they should do, and then strategize together
Mm.
on how to create that yearning in a way that has the soul singing.
Mm. You know, when it comes to needs and wants, I talk about needs on Thursdays. That's the theme of Thursdays. But there's something beautiful about want.
Mm,
Want doesn't require justification. Like when you say you need something often come with the second part of needs is always because I need this because this. But with the want, I just want it because I want it.
mm,
You know, and that's very powerful when you think about it. So now, what is it that you really want? And like we was talking earlier before we start this opening, here's about make your want so massive, so huge, so big that you can spend the rest of your life wanting it. And
mm,
when you're wanting that one thing for a long period of time, you become sharper mentally about it because it's
mm,
something that you think about every day, you focus on because you want this big thing. And then oftentimes it creates this really good focus. Like some people get up and say, I don't know what direction to go in. You don't know what direction to go in because sometimes if you want it's too small, once you get what you want, then what? You got to think about something else you want. But if you want it so massive and so big, you can spend your whole life wanting it, never get it all. Never get all of it, but get increments of it. But it's so because it's so big. So then you might have something to want for every day. So going back to your journey, the legacy piece, the legacy creation piece, how do you create the legacy of wanting something that's gonna take you more than a lifetime to get it?
mm, mm. I think, you have to believe in the journey
Mm,
that we get so focused on, am I there yet? Am I there yet? And people will get sort of almost all the way there or a long way along the journey and then say, well, I'm not there yet, so it's not working, and go home just before they would have seen the most incredible sights or had the most incredible breakthrough. So I think, when you yearn for something, when you want something that big, that amazing, it almost comes with like an element of patience
mm-hmm,
because it's so big, you can't possibly expect it all tomorrow.
mm,
So you grow into it. Like, I don't believe we have to change ourselves. I prefer evolution. I have a coach training program that I call it is the evolutionary coach training program because who I am, who I am today is way better than who I was yesterday. I definitely know I can fall in love with myself a little bit more every day. And so today, the consciousness that has opened up for me is exponentially more than yesterday. The scope, the abilities to strategize, the ability to magnetize synchronicity, all these things expand every day. So being present in your life is, I think, the single most important thing in creating a legacy.
present. Like you're talking about like a gift, right? Give me that gift of presence.
Mm,
No, but I love what you're saying. My mind just wandered just now. I had some background noise and my mind just wandered, but I was following what
mm,
you were saying. So we're going back to the big want, the massive thing that we really want, and people recognizing that, hey, I go after this thing that I really want, and once
mm,
I get it, then what happened?
mm,
Right? Once I get it. So if you're going back, when you think about the people that are creating a legacy, the folks that you're working at creating a legacy, and
Mm.
once the folks that started off with the small ones, so how do you talk to them about once they have that thing they want, what do they do with it once they have it?
You know what, that is the perfect question. I think, the size of your want, it has got so much to do with the size of your self-image, your self-belief. So I don't preach about wanting big things because then, a lot of people can't reach that and then they feel somehow like they're not good enough, they're not enough. When I had small children, bringing up small children and running a small business was more than enough. Now I'm an elderly woman. Now I'm a stage of my life where my children have got their own children, or one of them has, and I can open up further to that. So it's always a case of what do you want next. Like, what's the biggest want you can imagine right now? And when you've got that, then what's the bigger want that opens up?
Mm. Okay, thank you for sharing. So now we get to jump into one of those first time experience that you want to share, one of those massive one that
Mm.
really shaped your life, your journey, that you learned so much from that you want to share with the world.
Hmm. So one of the biggest shifts, probably I don't even, maybe it's the biggest shift, but a huge first for me was the first time I went to China. And I had not got China on my list. Like
Mm.
when people say to me, I've got a new project, I tend to say, where is it rather than what is it? Um,
Interesting.
I love to travel. It's exquisite for me. I've found pieces of my soul all over the world with traveling. And the first time I went to China, I remember getting off the plane and I landed in Shanghai and my feet hit the ground. And as my feet hit the ground, I swear, my soul started to cry. I was crying and crying. And my whole experience was just home. I've come home. And
Mm.
I cried for 2 hours. I cried in the like there was a taxi driver had been planned to pick me up. He picked me up. He like I could see him looking in the rearview mirror the whole way, like, why is this crazy white woman like crying in the back of my taxi? Um, and it was just the most extraordinary feeling from my soul. It was completely unexpected. I was more I was a little bit ambivalent about going really, which I'm not usually with travel, but and I've just come home from my 50th trip to China.
Mm.
So, mm,
What happened? I'm curious.
you know, it's such a huge part of my journey in this lifetime was
Mm.
hugely connected and past lifetimes is hugely connected with China. I remember many past lifetimes in China. Um, and I have met several people from past lives in China. I remember going to see this very elderly gentleman, and he doesn't meet many people at all. He certainly doesn't meet Westerners, but for some reason he agreed to meet me. And I sat down in front of him, and he started to talk to me, and the translator um, I had a translator. She was talking to me, and after a while, I realized the translator had fallen asleep
Mm.
and I had been listening to him. I didn't speak a word of Chinese at the time. My Chinese is still appalling, but I can do a little bit. He didn't speak any English. And we had been speaking for 3 hours
Mm.
without noticing that the translator was asleep.
Wait. Let's back up, make sure I'm tracking this. So you say you went to Shanghai for the first time,
Hmm.
but you've been to China multiple times, but not Shanghai.
So first time I went to Shanghai, that was the first time I'd ever been to Asia, actually. I'd never been to Asia in this lifetime,
Okay. We're talking different lifetimes. So you're saying you've been there 50 something time in
in this
in
lifetime.
in this lifetime, you've been there 50 something
Yes,
time.
yes. So I first went July 2013,
Mm-hmm.
and I have just been for my 50th trip to China in that 12, 10 years, 11 years.
Okay, and that's the trip that you was just crying. The 50th trip.
When I first got there and I first was in China, that's where the tears just started, this absolute feeling of coming home.
And that happened in 2013.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So the story, I got the lineage now. I got the lineup. Okay, got it. Perfect. Wow. And so you went there for the first time in 2013, and you just felt
Hmm.
like you came home.
Hmm.
And then while you was there, you just feel like this is a place for you to visit. So you visited 50 something time, but during those time frame you was visiting, you met this one guy that you had a conversation with him, even though you started off speaking with the interpreter, but
Hmm.
then the interpreter fell asleep and you was feel like you was having a conversation with him where you both understand what was going on.
Yes.
Wow.
We were just fully in conversation. Um, and there were some others who were watching the conversation who they said they just couldn't look away. There was this magical conversation and we were responding to each other and they just were sat there watching and being in that energy. And then at the end of this conversation, he just looked at me and he said, "Thank you, my beautiful niece."
Mm,
And he told me about this lifetime where he had been my uncle and he'd agreed that he was going to come back to me in this life, in any lifetime when I needed him. I just had to show up and he would be there to support me. So I had many beautiful, like mystical reconnections
mm,
in China with people from people that I'd been with in other lifetimes.
mm,
So many experiences. And China really was the place. Another first for China was where I fell in love with myself for the first time.
mm,
I'd never been able to do that. I'd never understood that. And then here I was in a country where everyone was looking at me all the time with this literary adoration and thanking me for changing their life and thanking me for the healing I'd done for them, like just overwhelmed with love for me that I sort of got to the stage where I thought, if these people love me so much and they're reflecting such extraordinary love to me, maybe I should start to love myself too.
mm.
And I really it became they made it inevitable. Like it would have been rude not to love myself when they loved me that much.
So what changed for you once you start loving yourself?
Everything. Then I started to really step into my power and I started to trust those experiences. For instance, that I had with those incredible people, I got to meet more and more just incredible teachers in China. I got to tap into bigger past lives where I'd had and learn more about who I'd been in those spaces and bring that into my life. I walked away from a very long, unhappy marriage because I felt like I knew, and I didn't feel like I knew I deserved more. I knew I had the power to just go and have more. I multiplied my income, so many things. Hmm.
I gotta ask you though. So what was that? What was the unfinished work that you felt you had to you figured out once you start loving yourself and start going to China? What was the unfinished work that you probably recognize from your past life? Is it what you're doing right now or something else?
Yeah, I don't know if it was unfinished work that I recognized. It was more, there was, that's just not true. The unfinished work was really stepping into my power as a spiritual, energetic leader, to really own my leadership capacity. That's something that I know that I sidestepped repeatedly in previous lifetimes. Um, but also a huge amount of that work is really in going to those lifetimes where, you know, we've all been in so many lifetimes that anything that we're trying to master in this lifetime, we almost certainly mastered it already somewhere else. I mean, maybe not social media, because that's, I don't know that we encountered that, but who we needed to be for that, the ability to express ourselves, to own our power, whatever it is that we're working on to make that happen, we'll have mastered that at some point in our millennia of history. So to be able to go back and tap into that sense of having already mastered this and bring this into a current life is a massive accelerator.
Mm. No, that's interesting. Thank you so much for sharing. And sometimes people might hear this and they just don't get it. And I
Mm-hmm.
recognize a lot of time when we are talking about things that a lot of people probably haven't experienced, but then they hear it and some disbelieve it, some believe it. But I would encourage anyone that's listening, you don't believe or disbelieve, just go trying to find and experience yourself, right? Because a lot of things are happening to other people that you just never experience it. And
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to enough people to realize that for me to stop doing that and just like, wow. So I'm curious now about your story, your journey, and
Mm-hmm.
seeing what you have discovered from allowing this experience to happen. Because some of us start accessing it and we just run away from it because of society. We find a way to block it, suppress it, and we don't even get to tap into what else is there. So when
Mm-hmm.
you did that for yourself, and are you trying to have other people access the same place, the same space that you're accessing? Is that part of your work right now?
Yes, yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, I do. So the fun thing about my life is, I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years. I work with people to do practical, strategic business development, but then to go into past lives and see where they can free themselves up to do more, to dive into deep energetics. Like I've studied energetics for 30 years now. I've knelt at the feet of Eastern masters and had them pour their wisdom into me for hours. Like I hold so many codes from so many lifetimes and so many places in this lifetime. So it's great fun to bring them together. So what I would say is, if any of this is like a complete turn off, like I'm saying, for some people, like, no, it's fine, that's fine. I'm not here to persuade anyone about anything. What I would say is the first time I had any kind of like, and I suppose there's been many, but the first time I saw somebody else's past life, I thought I'd lost it. I really thought I'd lost the plot. Um, and I was talking to this person. I was completely distracted by a past life I was seeing of theirs, and I'm trying to like, so what is going on? I hadn't even recognized what it was almost, and then it started to happen more and more, and I realized they can see like trajectories. They can see where people have been in space, where they're going in space. Um, and to be able to read deep into the energy of what's blocking somebody and holding them back, and to be able to take them back to heal that block and move forward. You know, we're all expand. If what we're all here for is expansion, I really believe this. Like why would the soul come to Earth with all its duality, if
Mhm.
not to learn and expand and to grow consciousness? So as we're trying new things, as we're doing things for the first time, like That's why I was so attracted to this theme of your podcast. Like, because every first grows our consciousness, it opens us up. So if
Hmm.
you're curious about something you hear, something you experience, and you just say, well, this is my first time, I'm just going to look into it. As you look
Hmm.
into it, the energetics open up. And then you start to see more. But if we shut it down, if we dismiss it as a coincidence or this crazy British woman like talking about this nonsense, like if we shut that down, then that's no longer open to us unless in the future we decide to open it up. For me, I thought the whole thing was mad and I'm super open. So I opened it up and had a look. And then I learnt more and more and discovered more of myself.
Incredibly said, my friend. That is the power of first time experience, Lisa. And I think I would encourage a lot of people just to kind of just re-listen to what you just said, because here's the wisdom in what you just said just now, is that we're gonna encounter a lot of first time, and first time creates more capabilities, creates more insight, more hindsight, more foresight into different stages of life. But if you don't really pursue that first time, you never know where it's gonna take you, right? It's like an invitation. Somebody shows up for the first time, say, "Hey, come with me over here," and you're like, "I'm scared. I don't know where you're gonna take me," and they never go. They never experience that first time experience. So this is something I'm learning a lot too. Is when I'm hearing people saying something I never heard it before, automatically my brain goes off. This is new. I need to find out where this is going. So I look for those things. So when somebody tell me something I never heard they say it that way, I'm curious now. And but a lot of us we shut up that curiosity because we are afraid of where this thing is going, and it might not be something that we're capable of holding in our space. So it's very powerful that you actually like, I'm taking this thing on. So no, I'm a firm believer in this philosophy that saying those who study history are masters of the future. Those who study their own history are masters of their own future. So then if you want to erase the mystery from your history, you gotta go tap into it. You gotta go recognize those first time experiences and pursue them. And it sounds like, Lisa, you are mastering this space. So what did you learn? We go back into the lesson piece now. What did you learn from really open up to your first time experience that have taught you so much about life, about yourself, that other people might just be able to access and learn themselves?
Mm. So I really learned, I think the most important thing I learned is that I am completely incredible. Like, and
Mm,
that sheer mind-blowing level of incredibleness that each of us hold, the unlimited potential, the when you think about, I learned how much compassion I can hold. And
mhm,
I remembered the lifetimes where I learned that. But I remember I was on a very specific journey, and I was receiving like just downloads. And there was this feeling of like being in the amount of compassion that I can hold.
mhm,
But imagine being in a cave where this was my visceral, like my felt experience of this, being in a cave, which represented the amount of compassion that I could hold. And thinking, oh my God, this is huge. Like, I can hold so much compassion. And then suddenly the floor dropped out, and I'm in like an unspeakably, exponentially bigger cave of the compassion that's available
mm,
beyond that. And then the bottom drops out again, and you go exponential with the amount of compassion you can hold. To the learning for me in this experience is to recognize how extraordinary, like just to own the power of what you can hold, the power of who you are, the power of your special skill. I have a very special superpower around compassion.
mhm,
And a superpower is just a fraction of what it can be. So there's this, I think what I learned to hold, that's what I'm saying. What I learned to hold was humility and power, like humility and self-love. Like, oh my God, I am a cavern of compassion, and that's incredible. And there's exponentially more caverns of compassion available to me if I drop into them.
Mm.
And I think that's the same with love, with, whatever we naturally feel that we're good at, to just lean into, to drop into the exponential shift of that. It's easy. That's what I really learned. It's easy. We try and make it hard. If we try to imagine trying to make a plan to be more compassionate,
Mm.
you'd have to like go and look for somebody who needed compassion. So you're creating the energetics of others needing compassion. And then you're somehow just like, if you just decided to drop into your compassion, to drop into your curiosity, your love, whatever it is, change is easy. Thinking about how to change makes it hard.
That is so true. In matter of fact, I was thinking about this today. I was thinking the hardest people to do anything is the people that are very smart
Mm,
because they overthink. And the easiest people to do anything, the people that are not that smart, meaning that they're not that smart in certain things. Not meaning that, you know what I'm saying? Like I don't know enough about this thing, so I would do something. But when I
mm,
know so much, I'm paralyzed by knowing too much, and I don't do anything. So even in a lot of things in life, the best kind of people to get to execute are the people that doesn't know a lot.
mm,
The people that doesn't do a lot because they know so much, they end up becoming teachers because you can't do it because you know so much about it, you're gonna overthink it. And then those who do not know it so well, they're like, I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna try something. So
mm,
sometimes I realize that sometimes ignorance is really awesome, and
mm.
sometimes too much knowledge is not so awesome. What are your thoughts?
I I agree. Like knowledge is so contextual, isn't it?
Mm,
Like you and I could know something, absolutely know it 100%, and it could be the opposite. Like
mm,
somebody could know Jesus exists, somebody else could know Jesus doesn't exist. Like wisdom, like knowledge has its worth, but only when it's applied with wisdom, when it's applied
mm,
with
mm,
creativity. If you look at what's fascinating is if you look at the studies of how children develop, because if you tell a child, you're so smart, well done, you're so smart, actually, you start to limit that child because then they become afraid to be less smart. They become afraid to fail.
mm, mm,
And their identity becomes, I'm so smart, I'm so smart. I hope I never lose that. I will play. The studies done, Carol Dweck did some incredible studies around this, like where children will start to play dumb rather than risk being less smart. But if you say to a kid, oh my God, you worked so hard. I love the way you did that. You're so creative. You really stuck with that. Then what they want to do is more of that. They get smarter actually because they take more risks. They end up at a much higher level. And that's got to be true all the way through. You look at the banking crisis where people were lying hand over fist
mm,
because they didn't know enough. They didn't dare stand up for not knowing, so they kept bluffing their way through.
mm,
But if you've got honesty, if you've got ethics, if you've got compassion, if you've got creativity, you can do anything with those things. Like they're not limited in the way knowledge is.
mm. So for those who are listening, knowledge is important, but knowledge without action is it's just knowledge, right? You gotta do something with what you know, and oftentimes that's what happened with us. We're in para we are paralyzed by knowing so much that we don't do anything with it, and then you might as well don't know it in the first place because you didn't do anything with it. Because we're here for the experience, like I said, I'm here for the experience, and if anything that's gonna prevent me from having the experience, I'm getting rid of it because I'm here to collect experience. And if I'm here, I thought about this too, right? Let me go here with you. I
Mhm,
was thinking about the human experience, and I was thinking about the spiritual side of it. I was using God as an example. I was
mhm,
like, God knows everything, right? If you know everything, you can't have a new experience.
mm,
So in order for God to have a new experience, he had to create a state of forgetfulness. And when you enter the state of forgetfulness, then you go back and remember. So now you take on new experiences again. So I was thinking about life the same way. I was like, so I guess right now, it's the purpose of life is for me to collect experiences, for me to remember who I am fully. And for me to do that, I had to come here in a state of forgetfulness. And then I start accessing the memory, the knowledge, and then I take on these new experiences. And then life feels a lot better because if I'm stuck with knowing everything, then no new experiences. It's like there's just this. But when there is new experiences, I start moving. There's
mm,
motion, there's activities. So doing is so important, but also being is as important as well. What are your thoughts?
mm. Beautifully put, my friend. Yeah. Yeah. We need that humility of recognizing that we don't know everything. Um, so many people are terrified of being quote unquote found out, that that's one of the huge fears that stops people putting themselves forward into the next phase in life. So many leaders are terrified that somebody's going to find them out,
Hmm.
that they somehow shouldn't be where they are. And actually, when I coach into that, when I dig into that with them, it's because they fear that they don't know enough. But it's not the knowing that gets you there. I say you could know something that's completely different to what somebody else knows.
Mm,
What matters is, what do you do with that knowledge? What do you do with that insight? How do you show up in your life based on that knowledge? And
mm,
and are you willing for that knowledge to change? Are you willing to be surprised or wrong, God forbid, for many
mm,
people?
mm,
Like, I love to find out I'm wrong, because that opens a whole new thing. Like, what? I was so sure about this. Yeah. And you're telling me it's wrong. That's so exciting. Let's look into this. Like, imagine if people had that attitude.
mm,
We wouldn't have half the problems we have on the planet now.
mm. Competitions make nobody wants to be wrong,
Mm,
but the journey itself makes people like, yeah, I gotta try again. Let me see what new experience I'm gonna get from trying again to get
mm,
so I can get it right. That's powerful. So we're gonna wrap up here, Lisa.
mhm,
And it's been amazing talking to you. And I'm curious if somebody hear you right now. I'm like, Lisa, you are my hero, actually. And I would love to connect and work with you. How can they do that?
mm. You can come and find me on social media. That's a really good way to. I love sharing things on Instagram or Facebook. Instagram, I am Lisa Wynn, nice and easy.
Mm-hmm.
I have a beautiful new membership about to start. I have one that's current. I have, so many ways to be in my space with me. But coming and getting to know me on social media is an amazing way to do that.
Mm. You have a website too?
I have a website, lisawynn.com.
Okay, perfect, perfect. And so far, we've been chatting really good, really deep conversation. A lot of people probably don't have these kind of conversation. And I'm curious to know what are some of your biggest takeaway from this chat today?
Mm. Mm. A lovely question.
Mm,
I I feel really inspired to go and consciously create more firsts. I feel like
mm,
that I've been so lucky to have so many amazing firsts, and almost am noticing that I spent so much time digging out those firsts. Actually, I want to go and find some more firsts that are super uncomfortable, that stretch me, and that I know nothing about.
mm.
Mm.
Well, one for the first team.
Yeah.
First are awesome. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I really enjoyed the conversation today. And when you talk about the past life piece of it, that kind of interests me because I'm hearing people talk about a lot of different things lately. And the more I talk to people on the podcast, the more I reach out to people, I'm hearing different stories of people, other people experiences. And I know like previously in the past, so a lot of these stories wasn't making it on the media,
Mm,
wasn't being shared. Maybe they were sharing in small circles, but not really where a lot of people can hear it because sometimes people, somebody else might be having some of these experiences, but are afraid to share it because they don't want to get judged. I want to put in their little box so nobody will kind of like recognize them too much. So no, I
mm.
appreciate you coming on here sharing your story. And my other question would be is what is that one thing or two thing when people do it drive you crazy?
What do people do that drives me crazy? I like shut themselves down to possibility. When
Mm.
people are so sure what you're going to say that they don't listen to what you're going to say.
That is
When
they're
you've got
so sure.
something amazing to share, and they're like, nah, yeah, I've tried that. I've done that. I've tried that, and that didn't work for me.
Mm. Oh, that's interesting.
Mm,
That's interesting. And how many times should you try until so you can get a different experience? That's another question to ask. But yeah,
mm,
perfect. So thank you so much, Lisa, for the generous use of your time coming on and sharing your story today. And I hope we can stay in touch. And then for folks that are watching, you tune into Pandora's Awareness Podcast, a place where we collect stories and circulate life-changing wisdom. And you got some first-time experience, some wisdom from Lisa today that you probably haven't heard before. Or if you know, for hearing it for the first time, probably need to think about maybe it's time for you to listen to a lot more of these first times. And with that, any last word, Lisa?
Just thank you very much. It's been such a pleasure. My first conversation with you, and I really hope it's not my last.
All right. And with that, folks, make it a